welcome back to Dev Game Club, a weekly podcast in which two veteran game developers look at games from the past to discuss their relevance and impact today. I'm Brett Duville, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, a man who will clap his hands if he believes.
Tim Longo. Hey, I believed a couple times this last session for sure.
That's good. No, I know. I mean, I had actually picked out that before we talked pre-show, because I figured that might be another world that connected with you was Neverland, one of the ones that goes way back. We were, of course, talking about Kingdom Hearts, the original, following its release this month. I thought we'd look back at where this series started, or at least Tim did. Never going to fail to rub that in.
Nope. But ironically, you're the one that has purchased 9 games and is also playing the first one over again as we are playing this one on a different platform.
We're playing it on 2 platforms at once. Not exactly simultaneously, because I played a bit of it on. I got up to Wonderland basically, so I haven't played a ton of it on the PS4. I kind of wanted to see how it looked, and it does look pretty great for what they're working with from where they're starting.
That's what I was going to ask you.
There's a limit to how much you can really do that without remodeling everything and redoing everything, right? And they didn't do that. So there are limitations as far as how far you can really push that. You don't want to reanimate everything, for example, so you can only do so much.
Is it 4K?
Well, I don't have a 4K TV, so I don't know.
Okay.
But it looks great.
It's higher
1080p.
res.
It's definitely 1080p for sure.
That's
cool. I don't. I haven't bought a TV in a while, and I hope never to need to buy a TV again, because there's nothing wrong with my TVs. 4K is what you have these days, but I will not be able to see the difference.
No, I don't. But you do sound like an old curmudgeon when you say that, and I think it's high likelihood you will buy another TV. But
only because it'll break down, but not because I'll want to.
Okay.
At some point, TVs break down.
Yeah.
I still have my CRT, so.
That TV. Are you playing this on the CRT?
I am not, because I've been streaming it.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So I would have to find a way to put that someplace where I could also stream, and that's just not going to happen.
No, not again.
It's a little complicated.
That'd be hilarious, though.
Yeah.
This session for me was interesting. It was, to sort of jump in, as you may recall, I was stuck on the final boss in Monstro. So when I went to this session and started playing again, I was still having trouble, in fact. So what I decided to do was see, as a sort of test, see if grinding was going to make a difference or not. And just kind of, I figured, I hope I don't have to grind for the end, though I forget how. I think it's on some podcasts, as people were talking about Kingdom Hearts 3, someone had mentioned, might have been on Waypoints or something, that someone had mentioned that the final boss of this game, or maybe it was an email we got, was just this multi-phased craziness. So maybe I'll have to grind by the end again. But so I basically wandered around the whale, grinding.
Because of course you also can't leave, right? At that point, you have to defeat the boss to leave Monstro. Isn't that right?
I don't know. I didn't try because I could get to a save point. With Geppetto's ship.
Oh, right, there is one there, but I think
I didn't try going to the
allowed to leave.
Gummy ship.
There are definitely points where you can't. Which it does tell you the very first time you get on a save point. Not every save point will let you go back to the gummy ship. So
I didn't try. You could be right. I wasn't going to leave any. I could. It seems like I could effectively grind inside the whale, which I just moved through those. Is it the throat or something?
The stomach?
The stomach, maybe? Yeah. No, the stomach's where the boss battle is. Anyway, I just moved through those rooms that we'd been through before.
The cells or whatever they're called.
Yeah, and just things kept respawning and stuff.
Chamber 1, chamber 2.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So, but the thing is after going through that, I spent some time that definitely sunk some time into that. It didn't ultimately, because of the weird middle ground hybrid that this game has from a combat perspective. Um, I don't know. I don't know what your experience has been. I'd be interested to know. It sounds like you're over leveled for where I am, from where I am, but because it's action oriented, I don't know if the grinding can't, almost by design, the grinding can't impact things the same way that it does in the other games, because the twitch of it has such a big impact on your success.
Right.
So
Well,
I tried to grind to see if it would help me, but the battle ended up being about this. I mean, I didn't grind forever, like for 5 levels or anything. I'm sure
right. So the grinding is very slow because I actually got to a point with, and you didn't do this world. We'll talk about that as well, I guess. But with Atlantica, which
Mhm.
is the Little Mermaid world, and it has Ursula as a boss, and it's a uh, multi-stage boss. Although I think, yes, in between them you have an opportunity to save or to have a reset point or checkpoint, so that you don't have to do the initial part of the battle if you fail the second part of the battle.
Mhm.
Um, so there's a battle with her, normal sized, that is a little bit more JRPG-y, although in an action context, where there's a trick to it and one of the characters tells you about it, and so it's not super hard to decipher, but it had some of that elemental magic stuff that we talked about that you're like, I kind of missed that that's not there. So I had been looking forward to what you were going to say about that, but I found that extremely difficult, that particular battle, partly because it's in 3D, and we'll talk about the 3D navigation. Like you're moving on a 3D in a 3D space,
Yeah.
not in a 2D space. So you feel sort of like Khan in Wrath of Khan, in that you're having trouble moving up and down in space, and you're stuck on this one plane. It's not great. So it can be hard to find her.
Wait, what?
It,
What was that Wrath of Khan? What
you
was that
know,
reference? I'm forgetting how
his
that would.
strategy betrays a certain two-dimensional thinking, Kevin.
Okay. Okay. All right. That
So
was a deep cut there. I was like, Khan, yeah, okay. I'm thinking through the movie. What is he talking about? Totally. I had to ask sorry to interrupt, but
that's okay.
okay. Continue
So
with
I found
your.
that really difficult, and so I was going to go and see if I see how much I could level. And leveling is very slow.
It is. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
very slow, and you kind of don't really notice it through much of the game. But if you get to a point where you feel a little stuck, you're like, well, okay, I guess I can go grind, and well, you'll be grinding for a long time, my friend.
Yeah.
So instead, what I did was I went back to lots of other worlds and went and found more Trinity marks, because by that time I had more Trinity stuff available. I went back to the deep jungle, and did the
Ugh.
vine sliding mini game, because there's a mini game there you can do.
Wait,
I
what?
don't remember
What do you mean
what else
vine
I did.
sliding?
So there's that part where you can jump down this tunnel. I don't know if you ever did that in Deep Jungle, and you're doing basically Tarzan's
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
sliding down the
Uh-huh.
vine. Okay.
Yeah.
If you go back to the Deep Jungle after you've finished that
No.
world.
No, no. I don't want to go back.
Yeah, okay. Well, if
Don't
you
make me.
do, there's a mini game in there where you can slide down that thing, and
You get scores or something?
you have to find these fruit, and the more fruit you find, you open up additional pathways, and apparently at the end of doing all of them, you get something great, but I don't know what it is because I didn't do them all. Because that actually makes me motion sick, that vine sliding. And that's what had made me sick playing it whenever we played it last weekend, I
Oh,
guess,
you didn't
was
mention
that
that.
part.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, no, I had to stop. I had been playing for a few hours, and I did that for like a minute and was like, oh, okay, well, I guess I'm done streaming today because now I'm not feeling well. And I went back and I did some more of it, and it wasn't horrible, but it had been pretty bad. So, anywho,
Wow. So did you
but
do the?
even doing all that, I didn't really level up. I just
Yeah.
kind of
No.
went around. What I ended up finding I could do that was actually more effective was, and we can segue into a different conversation here, was that I reallocated my abilities points. to do things that I needed more help with. I needed more magic, so I put on things that allowed me to generate magic. And the other part is you can, and this is another thing you haven't done, I don't think, is that you can go to your party members and they have behaviors that you can deal with, and you can give, for example, Goofy has a tendency to do healing, right? He's the guard, right? He has the shield, and you can give him a bunch of appropriate potions, like high potions or mega potions, whatever makes sense for the level that you're at. And he'll just throw them in when you need them.
And heal you?
And heal you. Yeah, heal the party.
Yeah, somebody's been healing me, but I couldn't tell who and how.
So they will also cast spells. So
yeah,
Donald will
Donald
cast spells, I think, most of the time. But Goofy will also throw potions at you, basically, when you need them. And so that's how I ended up getting through that. And in general, at that point, when I knew I was going to boss battles, I would go, oh, I need to load up Goofy and things like that. The frustrating thing is that if you then fail, if you assigned all that stuff just before going to the boss, it's all cleared away. If you reassign all of it, so you have to like go back and forth from a room or something if you actually want it to stick, which might lead you to getting into some combat and him using some, and so it ends up being kind of a pain in the butt.
Yeah, right, exactly, right.
But it's not a terrible idea to kind of give the player that opportunity to go and assign those things in at those points. And it makes some of the, like, having that accessory shop or item shop or whatever make a little more sense, that you would want to go back there and stock up on that stuff so that you could fill in those slots. I found myself also putting ethers on Donald on occasion if I knew I was going into a battle.
I do that for boss battles, but I actually have a fair number that I've collected, but I haven't been putting them on them because I feel like they were probably just going to waste them on themselves. But I didn't realize they were. I mean, if you get the megas, I guess, and you only give them the megas, then they will heal everybody.
Right.
Which is
you could do that too. Yeah,
that's probably a good strategy. Yeah. But I saw some of the abilities sort of relate. Maybe this is what you're talking about too. That I don't remember how they're described per se, but some of the abilities sort of say that it will give other party members magic points or something. I don't know if
there is. I think there's an ability for basically Goofy, maybe, or maybe even Sora to shift magic to somebody else.
Yeah, it's something like that. Yeah.
I think there are those. I don't usually use those. What I tend to use are MP Haste and MP Rage, which MP Haste makes you gain magic points back more quickly. You gain magic points just by hitting people.
Oh, okay.
And so you'll gain more back every time you hit somebody if you put on MP Haste. And then MP Rage, I think, makes each time you are hit, you also gain them.
Okay.
So you have basically multiple ways to be getting the mana back, and that's what I found I needed, is that I just didn't have enough. And so instead of like kidding myself out with ethers, and having to go and do the items and navigating the menu, which is terrible in the middle of combat, it's not a good feel.
I was just going to mention that even if you don't have the right spells hotkeyed, that's also just, even sometimes the hotkeyed spells, I don't know, there's just a delay to them or something that
you have to kind of jam the buttons pretty quick and know what you're going to do. And I have fire and arrow and cure are the three things that I always have on. Arrow is defensive and cure is of course healing. So
that's the same build I have, or whatever you want to call it. Not really a build, but it's just so weird to menu dive in the middle of an action. I mean, the note I wrote down that I think is not intended to be controversial or anything, but after that little grinding session that I had and finding it, so I was looking at Sora and seeing how much XP till next level. I was like, 200 and something. I was like, okay, that's not too bad. We can bang that out, guys. So let's go. And you're getting like 4 points and
Yeah.
3
Yeah.
points from, and I was like, oh no. So maybe, and so then I was thinking, well, maybe they want you to lean into the technical stuff. So you're like getting XP like twice as fast. But I don't buy that system because when you are surrounded by like 6+ enemies, being able to really, I don't know, maybe you just get the hang of it. I'm sure there's people in the audience yelling at me right now, but if you get the hang of it, I'm sure there's some Dark Soulsian aspects in there, but I just have not found a good way because the camera is so bad. And you're basically having to lock onto every single one. And even that's not completely reliable because other enemies you're not locked onto may get in your way.
Yeah.
And so I would accidentally hit something nearby rather than parry the thing that I wanted to. And so the technical stuff seems very hit and miss to me. So it can't be a reliable way to grind. And so at the end of the session, and then finally finishing the boss, basically just by using a bunch of items, overusing items, sooner than I needed to. And I did get a bit of the rhythm of the boss because you can parry the boss in some places too, and there is a bit of pattern recognition there. I kind of just came to this conclusion that this isn't a grinding game. Like, I don't think it's inherently designed and balanced and tuned in a way that it is a grinding game. I think they have tried to, at least on normal, balance it that if you play the game straight through, you are around the place you should be. Versus, say, like we've talked about Final Fantasy IX, there seemed to be kind of, if you just played sort of linearly alone, you were going to hit a wall and you would have to grind. At least that was my vague memory. It's been a while, but I don't know.
I mean, you definitely get to the end of that game, and it's possible to be quite underleveled and feel like you need to spend some time just running around and getting random battles.
Yeah.
Now, I wasn't really in that position, but I had done a lot of side content that you hadn't.
Yeah.
In particular, all that Chocobo,
Yeah.
whatever madness, those Chocobo levels that were up side content wise. And I ended up with the ultimate weapon and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah.
Well, and to use a interesting recent example from our previous game, Pokemon, which had a similar, I don't know, there's some, I don't want to pit the games against each other for sure, because they're definitely trying to go after different goals and etc. If I just use those 3 JRPGs as examples, but the brilliant thing in Pokemon, whether it was how intentional it was or not, hard to say. Let's say it was. They had this sort of opt-in nature to the trainers that were in the world. So they, the placed trainers. We talked about this in that one, and it gave you basically on the critical path, if you played through the game on the path that they want you to, and you fought all of those. I was a little under leveled at the end, but for the most part, I didn't do much grinding. And then of course they have the whole Pokemon system itself and in the creatures. So there's other aspects at play here, but I'm just talking about the one sort of, I guess I'll say, world design aspect of it. That was something that you could choose to do or not do. And then if you wanted to just go grind on your own and ignore those trainers, you could, but it gave you enough. It's kind of in the middle of the two, the two games. Mm-hmm. While this one I feel like is just an extreme on the opposite side, where it's the combination of it being action oriented in real time, as well as, there really isn't not only is it not tuned for grinding, but there's not even really a good place. Well, I guess you said that what's it called? Traverse Town?
Yeah, Traverse Town. The other place is if you go back and do the tournament, you have an opportunity to do a lot of combat all at once without having to reload, and you can just re-enter that tournament again and again and again. And there's like 10 combats or whatever you can just do in a row for each cup. And I beat 2 of those and then got to the third one and it was like, oh no, I'm not ready for this one yet. It got to like the 4th seed, so I would have had 3 more battles and I got my floor wiped with me. And you fight Cloud at that point. Cloud Strife from Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah.
And I
I was
just
going to
went,
ask if you finished that.
yeah, and I just went, oh yeah, I'm not ready
Yeah.
for this, so I'll come back. That was another thing I think I went around and was doing when I got kind of stuck a little bit on Ursula. And
So what?
yeah,
Well, I was going to ask, what kind of stuff has the Trinity stuff given you?
not a lot. Normally, it's you find additional things like additional Dalmatians, which of course, I mean, all this is sort of feed forward loops, right? I mean, positive feedback loops, because you get more Dalmatians. Well, that means you can go back to Traverse Town and get more gifts and etc. So you have these kind of just benefits where you could just have more stuff. You have more, I don't know, mega elixirs and whatever. So you end up with just more good healing things that you don't have to then go buy. Although, like I said, I've got plenty of funds, so I'm not sure that that's really an issue. But it has been fun to kind of go back and just re-go over the worlds. And the other thing too is if you're off searching for them, you might just end up grinding just because you're recovering these worlds and doing some combat along the way.
Yeah, that's true. I guess so. That'll build
Yeah.
up over time. Yeah, but I
Yeah.
mean, the few that I've done just seem like the rewards themselves don't seem to be that useful or worth going all the way back for. Because some of them are hard to find again.
They are. And in fact, one in the deep jungle, I was just like, which way do I go? And I literally stopped and I was standing on one. And it was green, and it was difficult to see because it's a very green level. And I was like, I can't believe I managed to find this, which was a little strange. And there's a couple colors I haven't unlocked yet, which are the yellow and white ones. So I'm gonna have to make another pass through at some point and get all of that stuff.
I feel like I have yellow unlocked. Maybe I just unlocked it.
That's possible. I don't know.
Thought I maybe did. The yellow isn't the yellow. Oh no, yellow's not the one where you stand on each other's head.
No, that's green, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, maybe I haven't done.
Yeah,
yellow.
I don't think.
And red is bashing through stuff usually.
Right. And blue is when you kind of get in a circle and
hold hands.
And you hold hands, and sometimes it teleports you, and sometimes it does other things.
Oh, sometimes it teleports. I've only had to give me money, so
it teleports you in Traverse Town. There's one very close to the little inn there on the sort of entry lobby.
Oh, you're right. No, I did do that. Okay, I forgot about that. Yeah,
and it puts you up on the second floor of that building.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. It's very interesting. Very weird game. Very weird game. Like I said, I'm still getting, and again, I don't know chicken or the egg on this, but I'm still getting Anachronox flashbacks. It's just such a weird mixture of things, you know? Of a game, and it's very intriguing, and I think it's really interesting to play for the podcast to go, because this is definitely not a game I would ever go deeply into thinking about.
Right.
Maybe that's why I wanted to play it, because it's always been so baffling to me as a game, and it was before I knew about the gameplay of it. And then when you told me before we started that it was real-time combat, then that blew my mind even more.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a very interesting case study on everything. And then you have the whole sort of Western IPs being added into Eastern IPs, and that's a whole nother level.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. It's just a crazy thing.
So it's unfortunate. I mean, you skipped Atlantica, as we mentioned, and it's unfortunate because that has some of my favorite Heartless enemy design.
Heartless. Okay, that's what you meant by enemy. Okay, I thought you meant bosses.
Right. The Heartless, not the bosses, but the Heartless themselves. And each world has, well, there are some Heartless that overlap, that are in multiple places, like the ant looking ones. I don't really know how else to describe them, but the little black ones. And some of the flyers and the wizards and stuff are in multiple places. But you go into Atlantica and everything is underwater. So there's like these jellyfish ones that are different sizes. And there's my favorite. There's my favorite two are in that world where there's one that's sort of like a shark head on a body. So it's a little bit like the shark people in the most recent Zelda, Breath of the Wild. where they have that kind of head that's a shark and then
Oh yeah.
kind of a
Yep.
sleek humanoid body. And it's sort of
Yes.
similar, except I think the heads might be supposed to be torpedoes. I'm not really clear because they look like they have little propellers on the back, but they're very strange looking. And then later, once you get kind of further into that world, there's then there's like a giant anglerfish that is a Heartless that also has 3 of those propeller headed, shark headed, whatever things hanging from it. So it like swims around and then it basically shoots them at you. And it's some of
What
the
are you
most
talking
memorable
about?
character
This seems,
design.
this sounds like a dream. I
It's,
don't
well,
want to go to this world now.
I found it dreamy.
It's terrifying.
And meanwhile, the whole time it's going under the sea, under the sea.
No, it's not. Is it?
Well, it's playing the music. It's not singing.
Oh no, yeah, but that's okay. Well,
Yeah.
maybe I'll try to go back and play it then. I didn't skip it intentionally.
No, you will have you can go back to it if you want. You're not at a point of no return or anything like that. So,
Okay.
in fact, I think we have to go back. I think we have to go back to Traverse Town again.
Yeah, but not to Atlantica.
Other worlds at this point. I think there are no new worlds and no forced reasons to go back to other worlds at this point.
Yeah, but there's probably some. You probably get a key there, right? A key.
Atlantica, you can. Yes, there is a.
Although I guess if I have the
keyboard.
Halloweentown one, I already have a better one because it's.
Yes. Oh. Yeah, I'm not sure which one I'm using. I think I actually was using the crab claw one.
It's a crab claw. That's cool.
It's the crab claw, but I can't remember if I switched it out. I don't recall which keyblade I'm using now. I must have switched it out because I did Atlantica and then Halloweentown and then Neverland this time. So I must have upgraded again.
Oh right, Neverland. I must be using it's the fairy. It's the Tinkerbell one. That's probably what I'm using now.
Yeah, I think.
I just got it, so yeah, I switched off. But yeah, so when you say design of the Heartless, you basically mean visual design, right?
Right.
I mean,
right. Well, there's some interesting new gameplay wrinkles with them as well. I think in that level, yeah, because the bigger things actually charge you, and it's kind of terrifying because they're huge and they're hard to avoid because they're so big. And then, of course, you also have this one that has these 3 sharks underneath, almost like they're pilot fish, or maybe they're torpedoes. Like I don't know what they're supposed to be, but it will like swim around and then it like just throw one at you. And so now you've got that to deal with, and now you suddenly have more enemies, and so you kind of like want to tackle that thing as quickly as you possibly can, even if there are other enemies nearby, because you want hopefully it's going to drop these things and be kind of stunned, and you can deal with it, and it gives up a fair amount of XP, I think like 20 or 40 or something like that. So there's quite a few.
Not 20. Watch out. Yeah, I just the reason I was asking for the distinction is and it does sound like there's some slightly different mechanics there, but for the most part, the Heartless fall into archetype categories throughout, and they're kind of just reskinned most of the time. Like there's a flying one that charges you usually, and they just change the look of it based on the world, right? And then there's they all have the little spirits that look like a little bit like the ones from Eco, but also it's in the Final Fantasy lore, right? With the creatures with the black faces and the glowing eyes like Jawas. What's that little guy from 9?
Oh,
his name?
You mean a mage?
Yeah, mage. But what was his name in 9? Do you remember? The little friend of
Vivi.
Vivi, yeah. But
I renamed mine Timmy. So
okay.
No, not really.
I've
only started doing that recently.
Great, that's wonderful. But isn't that a Final Fantasy thing with the black faces with the
mages?
glowing eyes. Yeah, so those are mages. But then the enemies, a lot of the Heartless have that look about them in this game. So are they saying
depending on the world, because they're not like that in Atlantica? Because they're jellyfish, so they're like these big white blobby things. they're actually really cool when they're the jellyfish. And then there is the sort of scarecrow looking thing with the lantern eyes. I forget what they're called, but they basically are they get alerted. They have yellow eyes and they turn red. They yellow like searchlights.
Yeah.
And then once they find you, they turn red, and then they start disappearing and reappearing. So they have different behavior. I mean, even in Neverland, you have those flying pirate ships, right? That are
Right.
they use projectile attacks and things like that. So they're a little bit different.
True.
So
Each
I do
world
feel like
seems
they
to maybe
layer
have
stuff
one.
in. Yeah.
Yeah. One unique
There is some
one.
reuse. I mean, don't get me wrong, but and then of course there's the mushrooms, which I don't know if you've run into.
Yeah, I have. I don't quite get those yet, for sure. And then the mages that fly around and their color distinguishes what their, I guess, damage type's going to be.
Yeah, and what they drop.
And what they drop, right? Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, but I mean, we probably could say this for a lot of games we play. What I'm about to say, but I'm wondering if playing this game on expert or whatever the hardest difficulty is where the game's combat really will shine, because I don't feel forced to really leverage the mechanics that are going on, either with the enemy design or with my own ability design and stuff. Like, for instance, I got, one of the abilities allows you to change the square button into a guard rather than a roll, which is what I have right now.
Right.
And, I got that ability and I had the points, and I was thinking, which one? I kind of assumed that they would replace each other, so I wanted to make a choice of which one I wanted. But at the end of the day, I was sort of like, yeah, but it doesn't matter. So then I just didn't do anything. I didn't. So, but I don't think that's necessarily the game's fault as much as it is I chose to play in the lower difficulty. And
well, and we did talk about last time how I don't think that the game has the fidelity to really telegraph all of its moves. Even though the animation's quite good, I do think it's very hard to read windups and things like that you would expect in like a fighting game or something like that. I think that this game probably could have benefited from a little bit more of that, but it's also limited in the fact, or it's weird to say this, but it does, because the camera is not constrained, it's hard to read those because you have to read them from any angle, right? So that's also a problem.
Yeah, no, they didn't make it easy for themselves.
Yeah. But when you get right stick camera as an ability that you put on Donald, no, I'm kidding.
I was what?
When you play this same game on the PlayStation 4, and you have the right stick camera, you can basically be in a position to always be able to be behind the character, and I think you can even push R3 to get.
Is this still a bit you're doing?
What's that?
Is this still a bit you're doing? Is that true?
It is. Yeah. In the PS4 version, you have
regular
right stick camera controls.
You're not lying right now.
No, I'm not. No. That's definitely a thing that they improved and additional in the PS3 and the PS4 versions.
I just feel like that would change quite a bit for me if that were the case.
Yeah, no, I mean the camera's indefensible, and we already didn't defend it last time, so yeah, it's pretty awful. So, we wanted to also talk about level design flow, since we kind of touched on Neverland a little bit there. Want to talk about your concerns with level design flow?
Well, I hit some of it last time, or actually probably every episode so far in this game.
But especially talking about the deep jungle.
Yeah, deep jungle was an example. Yeah, it's just it very much suffers from, I think, the early era of 3D level design that we've talked about with a lot of the games we've played in this kind of era, essentially. And they just didn't I don't know. I guess maybe this was, I don't know if this was Square's first sort of like fully 3D, real-time 3D level design game. I don't know. You'd have to tell me on kind of the historic.
And I'd have to do some research because I don't know off the top of my head that it is or isn't.
but you know, with Final Fantasy 9 as an example, which we talked about, that would have come out after this. Is that right? Did we figure that out?
Final
Was
Fantasy
the
9 came out before this.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, the
That was
you
a
know
PS1 game.
oh, that's right. I'm sorry. That's right. The just the pre-rendered nature of but essentially those games often are almost 2D games, and a lot of the games of the the JRPGs of that time were that way. So struggling with the combination, we've talked about this with Soul Reaver and some others, the combination of camera design with 3D level design is very tricky. And what they end up doing, and I think Neverland and the Deep Jungle are the best examples of this for me, but Neverland actually I think probably ended up being the worst one so far, even though I did enjoy being in that world, because I like Peter Pan and Neverland stuff. But when you're in the ship, you're going up and down through different rooms. They all look the same. All the doors look the same. Some doors are locked. Some doors are not locked. Some doors that are locked become unlocked later, and you're really not sure that they did become unlocked. I think that's the case, or maybe I just got confused and they were always locked. I don't know. I basically just wandered around for a long time and then eventually found the way I should go. They had a couple sort of landmark landmark rooms, so you could have a sort of like there was a kind of a foggy room that was sort of in the bowels of the ship, that gave you a little bit of a touchstone. But other than that, it was just very hard to navigate, and I got turned around because all the rooms looked the same for the most part, and they all went and wrapped around with each other, and it very much smacks of sort of a level designer, and I would call this out because I've made the same mistake myself. So I feel like I can talk about it some and be a little critical of it. Where level designers, in their 3D package, and they're, being real clever with how the flow of the level is going to go, and they're omniscient with that information,
Mm-hmm.
because they can kind of see the whole world and design the whole flow, zooming through the world as they see fit, and then it's in an era where usability testing wasn't as common probably, and so they just didn't see how hard it was for players to navigate, and there's no map in this game, and I don't know, it's just that just really falls down for me in that, because when you get into, other than the combat, when you get into each of these worlds, navigating the world in almost a puzzle like way, because sometimes you have to figure out the order of operations to do something so you know how to progress. That's a big part of the gameplay for these worlds, is getting through them,
Yeah.
and they just kind of, when it fights you that much and you get so confused on
Yeah,
simple.
I wonder if this is a case where they're, I mean, because Final Fantasy X was another game that was just before this, the year before this. Um, and that was also Square entirely. Although I'm sure it was a different team. I'm sure they were um, not working on it together, because this is like 9 months later or something like that. Um, so there's probably not a lot of overlap in the teams, and maybe not a lot of sort of, it was a time where it's like, well, we're learning this about level design and this other team's learning this about level design, and you're hopefully at some point that institutional knowledge gets built up. But I do think with this one they might be a little bit hampered by the fact that they're working with licensed environments. So I mean, you're on a pirate ship, and I think the designer's thinking, well, how do I maximize the use of this pirate ship, instead of how do I make this fun, and fun for the player, and obvious, necessarily, or whatever.
Yeah,
It's like,
maybe.
how do I shoehorn or get the most out of all this space? Well, I'm going to end up here because that's Hook's chamber or whatever, his office, the captain's chamber, captain's quarters, I guess you'd say. Oh well, let's well, we got to have a room where there's going to be a save, and then and you just kind of like start to put all these requirements together, and the fact that you've got the 3D layout, at least kind of in broad strokes, already set for you. It's like, well, you're going to have a bottom level of this ship that's going to be completely open, the cargo hold, and then, oh well, where's going to be the brig, right? You may start to add this stuff together, and there's suddenly a lot of requirements. I don't excuse it, because but I can see sort of where it might have come from.
Maybe. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I know you can make a ship feel like a ship and still have it flow better. And in that case, I mean, I feel like then you're letting your constraints guide you too much.
Yeah,
In the
yeah,
or
possibly.
sort of the realism constraints
Yeah,
rather.
yeah.
It is always tricky to kind of balance the how
I mean,
something should feel.
I think of like, what was the first thing you went and made if you're making a, I don't know, a Doom level or a Quake level? Oh, I'll make my house or my office or what,
Yeah,
and you quickly find out as a junior level designer, like, oh, that's terrible. Like that's no fun at all.
yeah,
And that's just working with the existing the sort of tool set there, and really just like, oh, I'll just constrain myself to a place I actually know. And I think this was maybe guided the same way, and that person never had the realization of saying, yeah, but that doesn't really work for the
yeah.
player.
No, I see where you're saying where the mentality came from. Yeah, that
Yeah,
makes sense. Yeah, I just think in there's two big things. Yeah, and I'm definitely not disagreeing. I think it's a fair point. I think when we had talked about sort of the logic design of the flow in previous episodes, combining with this example of the actual geometry flow, those two things are colliding in a really,
yeah,
extremely unforgiving way in this particular level,
yeah.
where, the order of operations is unclear about why I have to do what when, and then also the flows,
Yeah, yeah, and it's very and the technology of the time doesn't help. There's limited texture memory, so every door looks the same. And there was a hallway I was in, and I literally came out the door, and I'm like, oh, which door do I like? I'm already
well,
lost as to what door I even came out of. Never
yeah,
mind which one I was trying to find. There's that one
yeah,
hallway with three doors, and you're just like, which one did I do last time? I don't remember,
yeah.
and now I'm turned around. So yeah, I mean, I
Well,
get
and
it.
then well, and then camera design, right? This is
Yeah,
the third leg of that stool that is super super critical, and we talked about that a lot probably in Resident Evil, I would bet, and things. But the camera relativity you get when you do a level load transition.
yeah.
There's a particular room in Neverland in the ship where you have to do a Trinity to pull the ladder down. Do you remember
Mm-hmm.
that?
Yep.
And then when you come back into that room the next time, or well, I was going in circles, so multiple times for me, you go through that door and the camera pops in facing you to show you the ladders there. But when it does that, it switches your perspective around so you forget what direction you're going.
Right.
So they emphasize the ladder composition. So hey, ladder dummy, go up the ladder. But then if you press forward on the stick, you go backwards
Yep.
because camera relativity has changed a la
Oh, it's
Resident Evil.
also true when you go up the ladder. If you push onto the ladder, which means
Yeah.
pulling forward, right,
So
towards the ladder means pulling down. So you start
yeah,
going up the ladder and then immediately start going down the ladder. And the number of times I did that, because
it's
there's
like
a point at which it's just like, oh, you need to switch which direction you're using it now. That's a classic, that's a classic camera problem
yeah,
from like, I can't remember if it was like Devil May Cry was the first one where people were like, ah, this one solved it, or if it was something else at the time. There was like, here are scenes with pre-rendered backgrounds, and you go from one scene to another, and the perspective changes. And what do you do with the stick? Like, do you let the player hold the stick down, even though it doesn't make any sense that they're still doing this? And I think
no,
there was a game at that time, and it might have been Devil May Cry, that was just like, no, until they let go of the stick, we continue their intention that they're continuing to go in the same direction.
yeah,
And
no,
that was a big change.
that is the well. I think we talked about this with Resident Evil some too.
Yeah, we probably did. Yeah.
That is a, in my opinion, band-aid solution. That is a solution, but you know, this example in this room with this ladder we're talking about is a microcosm of kind of what not to do, not a kind of, but not what, just a what not to do. But the real solution that it's taken us years to try to get over is don't do it. Don't
Yeah.
design like you don't like the Devil May Cry example, the Resident Evil example. Those are situations where the cinematography of the scene is getting the best of the actual level design, and it should be the other way around. You need to design the rooms and the levels and the doors and the flow and the camera to all work together, not,
Sure. And I don't want to relitigate those games, because I think in the case of a Resident Evil, part of it is that you want to be discombobulated. So it's kind of okay, because it's too empowering otherwise. Like, I don't know.
I think that's why Resident Evil 4 was a revelation.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. But it is a different experience. It's a more empowering experience than I think Resident Evil is.
I don't know.
It's less terrifying to me. Someday we'll talk about that one.
We shouldn't relitigate that, but I think I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying I have succeeded at doing it, but I think you can do both. But anyway, yeah. So that room, that ladder is a hilarious example of sums up everything about my level design point. But we can move on from.
Yeah, I want to end on a positive before we turn to email.
I have some good positives.
Yeah, I was gonna say memorable moments wasn't one thing that you mentioned.
Well, I want to hear some of yours, even if you talk about Atlantica, which I didn't experience, but I guess the two I'd mention. Well, both of these worlds that I played this time, I loved. Halloweentown was kind of almost like the right length for me. It wasn't too long, and it had sort of like in my head at least, it had kind of a bunch of the big beats from the film that I really love, like the I don't even know what you call it, the hill that extends.
Yeah.
From the movie, and the moon it silhouetted against the moon, like really good art design and full realization of that film in this world, but down to your costumes changing for your characters, which I didn't know it did that, or I didn't notice it. I had asked you that in pre-show, and that was really a delight. And then they basically had all the characters you'd want to see in there in a nice little package. The Oogie Boogie stuff was really cool and fun. I just loved the big change. It was such a big difference from the other ones.
Yeah.
And then the other one for me, I love the Peter Pan and Neverland stuff. I love Tinkerbell, and I think those characters are great. Hook was wonderful. The voice actor was great. But for me, the really big moment that I was telling Brett in pre-show, that really is kind of pulling on direct childhood heartstrings, is when first they give you the flight, right, for the boss battle section or whatever. And then I thought after the ship, you'd be done, as you were with most of the worlds. But then you go to, I'd totally forgotten that we hadn't actually locked the keyhole yet. And then you fly to freaking London, and you're still flying. You feel like Peter Pan, and you're flying around Big Ben in 3 dimensions around London. And I was telling Brett about the Peter Pan ride in Disneyland that has a room very similar to that is just, it's a very simple design in the ride, but it's really effective. And just, I was blown away by that. Just very, very impactful for me. And it was just a great fantasy fulfillment of flying around like Peter Pan, and, Wendy's there standing, and then the keyhole ends up being in the clock, which was super cool as well. So that was definitely a great capper for that world, despite the ladder room.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, I like the Halloweentown a lot, and I do really like the first part of the battle with Oogie Boogie, where you're underneath the castle,
that was
/ whatever. Yeah. Because that does really recall the movie. I know you don't specifically remember that scene.
I forgot about it.
But there are lots of elements of that roulette wheel and the metal men with the guns that shoot you, and there's a lot of stuff that doesn't exactly match because they had to make a game out of that, but I do really like that section. That is, however, I remember the first time I played it, that was the point I was just like, can't I just be Jack dancing across these guns? Because in the film there's this spot where he's avoiding being shot by basically stepping on the guns as they come up, and basically constantly effectively dancing on them to keep out of the way. And he's doing his long walk across stuff, and I just like, I wanted to do that specifically instead of doing a very kind of gamey, tuck myself into a corner where I won't get shot, sort of thing, where it's just evade this thing, and it felt a little weaker from that. But
Yeah.
But the setting is really good and fairly true to the film, and has the garish colors, and has a lot to really recommend it. I also really like the flying around the clock moment because the scale is wonderful. You do have a sense like that thing just goes down forever, that it's really, really tall, that you're really, really high up. That is a really nice touch in that level. I think those work really well for me.
Well, they had. I'll just one more thing on the clock, and then I'll shut up. But they had a discipline to just let that moment be that moment.
Yeah,
you could have very easily put combat up there, and you're flying around and fighting more people, more Heartless or whatever. But it's really just the clock in the middle of the city, and you're really free to just, I mean, I didn't think of the puzzle right away, but I kind of wandered around a little bit trying to figure out what to do. But I didn't mind. I'm just flying around the clock, with no threat, and it was just kind of delightful that they put it in there that way.
Yeah, no. The flying feels pretty good.
It does, yeah. It's good, and you feel very Peter Pan like, and it's a really good example, I think, of one of their main goals and pillars for the game was definitely fantasy fulfillment of these franchises. These IPs. It's like, okay, we're in Neverland or we're in Peter Pan's world. What do you want to experience? Well, we got to go to Big Ben. How do we make that happen? But anyway,
and then I guess the last thing would be I went and did a bunch of the 100 Acre Wood. There is more to do because there's, I think, another page I have to find.
Yeah, I should go back and do that.
Yeah, and that's really fun. I like a lot of that because, again, that movie is, it wasn't something I saw as a child, but that my kids had seen, and so it still connects with me from that standpoint. Because it is very well realized as well. I mean, just you feel like you're there. So I'm not crazy about all the mini games there because there are some that are like that could be better. Very hard to control some of them. There's one that's involves some platforming and things like that, but there's no failure really. So I mean, there are some that it's there are times and scores and things like that, but it doesn't matter if you get different like end cutscenes if you do well or not. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't impact your ability to see all of it. So that's
so is this boils down to mini games?
Yeah, but they're in 3D and navigating the world and things like that, and so it's not. One of them's very 2D feeling, and the fact that it's 3D actually makes it a lot harder to read what's going on. That's with Tigger and some carrots. You'll see when you get there. But then there's one where you're in a swing. That's pretty good. It's just a timing thing, but it's funny. There's one that's Pooh is trying to get the honey from the holes in the trunk of the tree, and bees are coming after him, and you're supposed to jump up and swing at the bees. That was very difficult to do because the platforming to do that was very hard. That was one that I didn't do particularly well at. And then there's one that has a lot of being catapulted around the environment via a seesaw or a teeter-totter, depending on where you grew up, what that's called.
Okay.
We called them both, but teeter-totter is what we called them first.
Fair enough. I never thought about it until you just said that.
Yeah. But anyway, you get thrown different places in the environment depending on who teeter-totters you. And there's a couple other things going on in that area. And then like I said, there's another area I haven't been to yet because I haven't found the page, but I will.
Do you know what you get? Have you from doing all of them, or is it just for the fun of it?
As far as I can tell so far, and I don't remember last time whether I even finished it, but as far as I can tell, it's basically the joy of being in the 100 Acre Wood. It's really enough for me.
No, it is. If that is the case, then it is really just sort of the fun of it. I would be even more impressed, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. You do get a summon.
Oh, okay. That's probably the reason
You
to
do
do
get a
it then.
summon. Now, you don't have to do all of it. I think you get the summon from the first or the second minigame. Might even be the first. Um,
Is it Pooh? Who is it?
it is Bambi.
What? You get Bambi from the Hundred
Yeah,
Acre Wood?
yeah.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, you
And
get
that's I
this. You turn in these stones to the fairy godmother, as you recall, and you get summons. So I currently have Simba and Dumbo and Bambi, and I think one more. The lion. Oh no, that's Simba.
well, I have Aladdin and Tinkerbell. You get those automatically though, right? From
Yeah, I mean stones that I've turned in. Yeah, I
oh,
have.
from Stone.
Yeah, from
Wait,
stones.
where do you get these stones?
You find
I
them in
must have.
different places.
I think I might have sold one. Maybe I shouldn't have done that.
I don't think it would let you do that because it says turn
Okay.
this in to the fairy godmother in the
Oh, then
description.
I must not have found any then
Yeah,
yet.
but if you do
I
the
have
Hundred Acre
Simba.
Woods, you will get Bambi from that.
Huh. Okay.
I
Yeah. That's.
might have gotten one from the Dalmatians too. I can't remember if that
Uh,
was a gift or something. So I've done a lot. I've gone
that's
back
pretty
a
cool.
lot over a lot of areas, so I found a lot of things, and
Right.
yeah, so I'm having a little bit more of that stuff.
I have to admit, I haven't used any summons once so far.
I did Bambi
Uh,
once because, and we'll maybe talk about synthesis next time. I don't know if you've done that at all.
I
Um,
did. I did. Yeah.
okay.
I've done a fair amount, I
So
guess.
what Bambi
But
does is, as you kill things with Bambi summoned, Bambi kicks out items that they would drop. So
you mean like more items?
rare items like ingredients for synthesis.
Right.
So
What do you mean? She,
gems and crystals and things
what do
like
you
that.
mean? He kicks out stuff.
As you kill things, he drops things that they would drop. So you get a higher drop rate
Oh, I see. Okay,
because those
got
things
it.
are rare and there are abilities to make them drop more frequently called Lucky Strike, I believe, so that more of them
Yeah.
drop. But
Yeah.
this, I think he
Oh,
makes it even more. So yeah,
so you kind of farm. You can
you can
farm for
farm
them.
to do the synthesis stuff because to get the
Hmm.
ultimate weapon in this game, you have to synthesize some number of stuff, a lot.
Yeah, we'll have to talk about that next time because I'm trying to keep up with the synthesis stuff. It feels like you have to like keep making stuff to unlock more
That's right.
stuff.
Yes. Yeah, you do.
Yeah, so I don't know if I'll make it, but I don't know how many tiers of stuff
There's
there
a
are.
lot of stuff and it gets hard to get the ingredients after a while. And so I don't even know.
There's the grinding.
Yeah, there's some of that for sure. I was going to say take a break, but we only have 2 emails. So I wonder if we should just pile on through.
Yeah, yeah, it's late for you, so let's
That's okay.
keep
Let's go
going.
ahead straight to Dogger's email then. I want to apologize too, because I meant to get to this 2 weeks ago, and we were tight on time because you had to hit the ferry. And then I was like, okay, well, I'll get it next week. And then last week I just somehow missed it. So I apologize, Dogger, for this. But and I did trim it down in a couple places, but I think we got most of the big bits. So if you want to go ahead and read that, sir. And
Okay.
of course, this was sent to devcaneclub@gmail.com.
All right. Subject is on Kingdom Hearts from Dagger Danielson. Hello, I'm happy that you are taking a look at one of my all time favorite games and love using this opportunity to hype myself up for Kingdom Hearts 3. I've noted down here several quick points on the current part of the game I find interesting, and you might have either missed or aren't explaining adequately. Feel free to skip as much of this as you'd like. First one is the choice of shield, wand, and sword determines your starting stats and in which order you receive abilities from leveling. Though by level 100, all players are equal in terms of stats and levels. When answering the second one is when answering the questions from the kids during the tutorial, you are determining the pace of the game. Answering with the top answers makes you both you and enemies level up faster, while the lowest choice makes enemies and you level up slower. Wait, what is?
You remember
Okay.
when at the beginning they ask you what's the most important thing to you? What are you
Oh, right.
afraid
Okay.
of?
Got it. Interesting. All right. Weird, but if you both level up, you and enemies level at the same rate, no matter. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so he says, number one, fast start that gets slower at the end. Number two, medium all the way through. Number three, slow start and faster at the end, relative to choice number one. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, I'm
Very.
still
I don't
not
know.
sure how I follow that, and I don't remember what choices I made, so I don't know how it impacted my playthrough. So
Yeah. I wonder if it was in the manual or something, because
that
that's
could be.
pretty okay stuff. Next one is one of the brilliant aspects of Kingdom Hearts combat system is the tech points. These are experience points you gain from mastering the system itself. This rewards high level play, such as parrying, um, hitting opponents' attacks with your own, and utilizing elemental weaknesses, i.e., you get elemental magic. And in several battles, you get tech points from hitting bosses' weak points or disabling their attacks. In my opinion, a brilliant way to signal correct play and reward high skill without leaving beginners behind.
Mm.
Okay, and then
I'm not sure we agree.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
Brilliant might be strong there, I guess is what I would say. I think it's just not signaled well enough. So
yeah. Well, I also the term correct play is always a tricky term for me too.
yeah.
Especially if you're trying to tell the player the correct way to play, which yeah. Anyway, next one is all enemies in the game, bosses and mobs, have simple, predictable behaviors and patterns. Learning behaviors and attacks along with how to avoid manipulate them is key to mastering Kingdom Hearts combat. Next one, if you ever need to grind levels, then Traverse Town is one of the best areas to do so. Duly noted. The next one, in Wonderland, you can get the Blizzard spell early if you find all the clues. Oh, okay, I did that, so that's why I have the Blizzard.
Yep.
Wonderland is probably the most confusing world in the game in terms of navigation. It, however, rewards you incredibly for exploring every nook and cranny. Kingdom Hearts rewards exploration to an extent that few, if any, games do. So keep exploring and be curious, and don't forget the Dalmatians. Apologize for the wall of text and hope you have fun playing through the game. It's not often that you get a fresh perspective on games from this era, and I'm looking forward to listening to your thoughts and insights on one of my favorite games. Well, Dagger, sorry for my criticisms. Yeah, I'm enjoying the game, but I definitely have criticisms.
Yeah,
But
I mean,
yeah,
I think some of this stuff is not. I mean, I think some of the technical limitations get in the way of some of it, like we talked about. I do think that there could have been a little stronger animation design to the combat stuff to signal a lot of that a little bit more strongly. But the idea that you might use elemental magic properly against things has not. I mean, even having read this email, I forgot about that, and I'm like, well, what have I been missing? Have there been things I should have been doing? So
well,
I'm kind of curious to go back and look.
one obvious one that I've been meaning to test out, but I guess I can probably figure most of them out. But with the mages that are flying around, they're obviously colored, and so if you use fire on the blue ones, I'm sure they go down really quickly. But they already go down pretty quickly.
They already go down very quickly, but maybe you get more TP tech points.
Oh yeah, maybe that's a good point. Yeah, there. But I kind of always want to just keep my magic points around, so I tend to not waste them on mobs. So, like I said, maybe the harder difficulty is kind of the way to really see that stuff. One thing I forgot to ask you, which is you are uniquely qualified to answer. I've been critical a lot about the camera design in combat because it's lock-on based, but also that combined with so many enemies at the same time. There's another aspect that we haven't talked about, and that's really AI design. And what I mean by that is right now it doesn't feel like the AI system is accounting for groups of enemies at all. It's just kind of like they're all in there doing their thing, and you're locking on who you can, or you're not locking on, or you have auto lock on, and then the camera's the best you can make it, right?
Yeah.
But I don't feel like we've gotten to a stage in AI design where, yeah, each individual AI can have its own thing, but some of the best systems out there are when they are really aware of each other.
Yeah.
So they're not making each other look bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So to your point, like, yeah, there's the telegraphing and animation design and effects design of that stuff. But if they're all doing it at the same time, it doesn't matter anyway.
Right. Right.
So
Yeah.
sometimes we call it the Kung Fu system or something like that. So
yeah, I mean, typically, yeah, I agree with you. And I think typically how that gets implemented is it's like you have a token, like I get to, I have the conch, right? I get to speak. I get to attack the player now because I've got the conch, and maybe I'll hand it off. And then so basically you have the opportunity for the rest of the behaviors are going to be like, oh, they're going to circle more, or whatever,
right?
Or they're going to play animations that support the idea that they're working together, like cheering on a guy or laughing when they get a hit in, or just any kind of things that you could do to support that. That might make that look a little realistic. But here I think it's really just we set up the patterns go, and there's probably randomness, and there's a bit of a mess after a while in terms of things just kind of popping up and hitting you. I think you can try to use the spaces as well as you can, like to get away from the center, maybe move out to the edges so that they kind of don't have a lot of directions to come from, but that's really hard in Neverland or Atlantica or whatever. Where
some of the rooms really fight that.
Yeah, it can be very difficult. So, yeah. And some of the setups don't work well either. Like if you play in the tournament, you're in that square, right? And the walls are up, and you've just got to fight in the square, So even there, it's like, well, you can run to an edge as quickly as you can, but then while you're running away, you're probably going to get targeted, and it can be hard to zoom in on the things that you want and stuff like that. So it's, I think this is a sort of thing that if they had spent more time on those elements and really thought through that experience, I just don't think we did that those days.
No, it was people hadn't figured out some of that stuff, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think the Arkham games are probably some of the best combination of, for me at least, of camera, token systems, telegraphing.
Right. Oh, and spaces are large, right? And, you can put the camera up high, and so you can really get situational awareness, and like there's a lot going on there. Yeah.
Really, yeah. But it's interesting to talk about the early days of this stuff too.
Yeah.
So, so you had a mail as well?
I do, and this one's pretty short. It's from our friend Ben Zaug from Iowa. The subject is random thoughts, and he says, first of all, I love the discussion about the idea of a general engine. He's referring there to the general graphics engine that has to render lots of different stuff last time. Due to all the variety of worlds and styles, the engine has to do so much, so it can't do anything especially well or focused. I love these little tidbits that I would have no idea about. And then second, he says, your description of Teen Titans Go movie sounded like something I had to watch. I thought you said it was on Netflix, but I couldn't find it. Did I mishear? Thanks, Ben from Iowa Zaug. Actually, I guess I maybe misspoke. What I meant is that I had signed up for the disc to be sent from Netflix. I'm one of the 10 or 11 people left in the United States that still has a disc subscription. But most of the films I like to watch are not available streaming anywhere. And so that is how I watch films much of the time.
That was the classic example of like, what's a record? What is the dial telephone? When you say Netflix, there's it doesn't even dawn on people that, or they may not even know that they're how it started.
Yeah, I still get the discs.
So in this case, but
I've got. I just watched a nice Blu-ray last night that is not streaming anywhere, so that was fun. Watched a couple good movies this week.
Good for you.
Yeah, so that's how I tend to prefer to watch. It's also less, fewer compression artifacts and things like that, so it is a cleaner picture. And the 5.1 audio is always better too, because you've got that all the space you want on the Blu-ray if you're getting a Blu-ray. So it is my preferred method to watch if it's available that way. Anyway,
there you go.
So there you go. And then as far as the engine goes, I mean, one of the things that they would do for this in earlier hardware, and especially the PlayStation 1 era, is they'd literally run different programs to do different things. And the PlayStation 1 rebooted super fast. And you could reboot. There's a way to basically pass in the arguments. And since you weren't filling a lot of memory, you only had 2 megabytes to fill. It was possible to basically have, I mean, you can see this in a JRPG from that era of like, oh, we're going to battle. We fade the screen away. Now it's black for 2 seconds or whatever. And then you're in the battle and it fades up or whatever. And in that time, often the system's being rebooted silently. And it's just slamming everything into memory as fast as it can. And I think there were ways to even keep some stuff in memory. I can't remember the specifics because I didn't program for that box. But you had to be able to do some of that really quickly anyway. And even on the Xbox, the original Xbox and the PS2, people were still doing that at times. And just restarting the box. It was often at that point more of a Hail Mary, like, oh, the game seems like it's in a really bad state. This will clean out memory and we'll just start the program over. But you didn't really want to do that if you could avoid it because you had so much more memory to fill. Anyway.
Was it saving things in some sort of temporary save file?
So it wasn't like go back. Yeah, it wasn't like fully rebooting, and I do think some stuff could stay in memory, but I really don't remember the details because like I said, I didn't program for the PS1. I think with the PS2, you were really just you were passing arguments to this thing. Oh, and you could. Oh, actually, on the PS1, I guess you could also load executable code into areas of memory and basically overwrite existing executable code. And that's a thing that nobody allows us to do anymore because you're modifying the code that's running, and that's a huge security risk. And even though I don't really see the concern for what we're doing, it's not done. And so as consoles have become more connected, having things that it's like, oh, let's just run arbitrary executable code at some address in memory is really frowned upon and is fact disallowed by technical requirements on these systems these days.
Fascinating.
Yeah, going back for a while. But back then you could basically load from the disk, and I think that's sort of what they did. There were a mix of methods depending on what you're doing. I mean, but there's times on the PlayStation 1 where it's like, oh, you got to put in a different disk, and well, why not just reboot the thing at that point? With a little bit of information maybe you're allowed to hold in memory for a brief period of time. So anyway,
I have this section is spawned a new podcast idea.
Oh boy.
All right. You ready?
Okay.
This is what we're going to do next, and it will take us the rest of our lives to actually accomplish. It's called Game Dev Club, not Dev Game Club. Okay. Game Dev Club. And what we're going to do is we're going to make a game for each of the consoles through history.
Oh boy.
We're going to go backwards.
I suspect I have the harder job here.
Yes, you do. We're going to make a Game Boy game, and we're going to make a Nintendo and then NES and PlayStation 1. We're just going to go one by one, and we're just going to make it. So it'll be, nothing can go wrong.
We're going to have a hard time getting programming access to the ENIAC.
So what does that mean?
The first computer. It was filled up.
Oh, got it. Okay. You want to go all the way back.
Oh, yeah. Okay. We got to start there. I tell you what, we'll start there. You just get us time on the ENIAC and maybe get it running again.
Okay. You've already built in a failsafe for this plan. It's not going to happen now.
Okay. Anyway, I want to thank those who emailed Dogger and Ben, and for everyone who sends us email to devgameclub@gmail.com. And of course, we love to have your ratings and reviews on iTunes. Occasionally you'll hear me singing them. And I'll keep doing that as long as people keep sending in crazy parodies. As long as you tell me what song you want me to sing it like, that helps me a lot because sometimes I don't know them. And there was an embarrassing one from last year where I just had no idea what song it was supposed to be. but you don't have to. We appreciate every rating review, whether or not it is so inventive. You can find the podcast on the web at devgameclub.com, and you can find it on Twitter at devgameclub. You can also find my co-host at
Tim Longo Jr. with a JR at the end.
And of course, I've been streaming this game, which we're going to finish this week, I should say.
Yeah.
You can find me streaming it on weekends at twitch.tv/Brett Duville. No underscore there. I have been blogging occasionally, and I did actually write something up about Earthbound this week. So if you're interested in that, you can find it at brettduville.com. Thanks so much, and have fun playing games this week. Good night.
Good night.